Hey there people, how you doing? So, today we have the complete comparison between the Vivo X50 Pro and the iPhone 12. Now, obviously the price points differ quite a bit, with the X50 Pro being a mid-range device, but there are certain quirks when it comes to the X50 Pro that could, in some ways, convince at least some people to go for the Vivo versus the iPhone. So, let's get started with, as usual, the design. Here, I gotta say the X50 Pro does look better. It looks a little bit more modern in my opinion, because the iPhones, they have the same iPhone 10 design that we had like, I don't know, 3 generations ago. That's a long time for such a fast moving market basically. The X50 Pro on the other hand, it looks a lot better. I think that with the punch hole cutout and the much smaller bezels, it looks a lot more modern and, you know, more 2020 when it comes to a smartphone. Also, the back of the device is phenomenal with this absolutely gorgeous looking matte finish. It does take a lot more fingerprints for some odd reason. I don't know what it is about this finish. I mean, you'd look at it and think that, yes, it's a matte finish, it wouldn't take any fingerprints. You know, like the Note 20 Ultra right here. But it takes a lot more fingerprints and it retains them quite a bit, so I'm not exactly sure what is going on with it. But anyways, when clean, obviously, I do think that the X50 Pro looks a little bit better. And so with the frontal design in consideration, I do think the X50 Pro does look a little bit better when it comes to design. Also, the design of the phone altogether with the much more rounded edges, it does feel a little bit more comfortable. On the other hand, one could say the iPhone looks a little bit more unique with the completely flat sides, like all over the place. It is flat, I mean the very definition of it. But in terms of comfort alone, I do think that the X50 Pro does a slightly better job. It's minor, but you know, it's better at the end of the day. So now let's talk about the display, because this is very interesting. Because on one hand, you have the Vivo X50 Pro with a 90Hz display, so easily that is like a major win for the X50 Pro, because high refresh rate in 2020 is like the best thing that could have happened in such a perilous year. And the iPhones not getting on board with that, it's not the way to go, in my opinion. I don't think that having just 60Hz on the new iPhones, which are obviously powerful, displays are obviously capable of high refresh rate, it's just sad that we do not have any high refresh rate. It basically makes me reconsider my options so many times when it comes to the iPhone 12. The 12 in particular, because other than that slow 60Hz display with slow in quotes, well, it's such a captivating device, the iPhone 12. But it's just not as much of a pleasure to use, because 90Hz and 120Hz obviously, they are so much smoother, so much more fluid, and you know, basically it looks so much better. But then when we move on to content consumption, well, things change quite a bit. Because on one hand, the X50 Pro, it has a beautiful display. Don't get me wrong, if you're watching YouTube videos, any standard dynamic range content, it looks fantastic on this one. You know, just as good as it would look on the iPhone 12. Now, of course, you have the huge notch on the iPhone, which just, yeah, it gets so much in the way, and it is so big, and it just stares at me, and I'm staring back at it. It's not pretty. I have not got used to it. I've used it over a month now, I think month and a half, but it's not nice. It needs an update. But so, yeah, overall, content consumption in standard dynamic range is very similar on both of these. However, when we move on to HDR, well, on one hand, the HDR support is there on the X50 Pro, but it doesn't do that good a job, you know. Whether it's Amazon Prime with HDR10 Plus or it's Netflix with normal HDR10, I do think that the HDR, whether it's something about the software or, you know, the color grade they're using, just it doesn't look that nice. The iPhone on the other hand, damn. The iPhone with HDR10, it looks fantastic. As expected, no doubt. But when we move on to Netflix, well, on Netflix, we have Dolby Vision, which is phenomenal. Dolby Vision looks so much better than any other Android device, because I don't think there is an Android device with Dolby Vision support. So basically, the iPhones with Netflix HDR, they look the best. I think that the overall content consumption side of things, and also including the fact that we have stereo speakers on the iPhone versus mono speaker on the X50 Pro, it's an easy win for the iPhone. But the overall display with the smoothness, that is a win for the X50 Pro. So, choose whichever one you want. I'm not entirely sure which one I would go for the display. I'm being totally honest, I'm completely torn. I've thought about this for over a day now, and I do not know, because I want both 90Hz, the smooth 120 or 90Hz, and the overall insanely good content consumption and HDR experience that we have on the iPhones. Why don't you guys let me know which one you guys prefer in terms of displays alone? Which would you pick? The 90Hz or better content consumption? But let's move on to cameras, because here's where things get interesting. Now, do remember, once again, the Vivo X50 Pro is a mid-range device. It has mid-range specs in terms of the chipset with a Snapdragon 765G, and then of course there's a lower price tag. So keeping those two in mind, these cameras, they are incredible in my opinion, because for a mid-range device, for the price tag it comes in at, it's just fantastic. The cameras, especially in photography, I think that the Vivo X50 Pro, in terms of the hardware that it's got, coupled with the absolutely amazing software which has no overprocessing, which you usually see in phones that come in at mid-range. Those phones tend to overprocess images, which give us crazy contrast and vibrance and unnatural white balances, tints. None of that happens here. You're gonna get amazing natural looking photographs. It's very close to the naturalistic look that the iPhones have, which is fantastic. I mean, if you're going for that look, the X50 Pro is like the next best thing that I've used in 2020. And well, goddamn, I'm always impressed with the X50 Pro's camera, because for the price, it is incredible. Also, it is a lot more versatile compared to the iPhone 12. It's even more versatile than the Note 20 Ultra, I think, because look at this. We have a 48 megapixel main sensor. Great. It also has gimbal stabilization. I'll talk a little bit later. But then we have a 2x telephoto zoom, 13 megapixels, also nice. It's amazing for portraits and all that. You get that tighter look and you don't have to lose out on details or anything like that. So fantastic. Thirdly, you have the ultra wide camera. It's not the best thing. It's like the Achilles heel of this whole camera setup. I think the ultra wide camera is something that needs an upgrade in the upcoming Vivo X60, which, man, I am looking forward to that one, so tune in for that. But anyways, then we have a 5x optical zoom camera on this one. You have 2x zoom, 5x zoom, ultra wide and main camera. That is a lot of lenses and cameras, and I've got to say the quality overall is very good. And I'm talking about photography alone. So overall, these cameras are impressive in photography, and when it comes to skin tones for human subjects, the iPhone is better, more consistently better, but the X50 Pro gets damn close. It's amazing with human subjects as such, and I do think that the X50 Pro comes in directly, like very much close to the iPhone, and it's fantastic with human subjects. It's the closest you're gonna get to the quality of human subjects, whether it's portraits or people's photographs, when it comes to comparing with the iPhone. So it's an impressive camera. The night mode, again, insanely good. And this is where the gimbal system comes in, because having a gimbal camera, that's what they call it. It's not an actual gimbal, but the stabilization is insane. And when you're holding your camera handheld for taking a night mode photo, you usually take like 2 to 3 seconds. This one takes 4 to 5 seconds, and it's so well stabilized because of the gimbal camera that it's very easy to take, and taking longer exposures at night is just that much more helpful. So because of that, very often the X50 Pro ends up taking slightly better, slightly cleaner, slightly more detailed overall images when it comes to night mode, as compared to the iPhones, and as compared to many other phones that I've compared it to. So yeah, overall, the X50 Pro is very good at night mode. Ultra-wide camera, not so much, but then neither is the ultra-wide camera of the iPhone 12 when it comes to ultra-wide night mode. So yeah, I would say that it's kind of a tie when it comes to ultra-wide night mode, because both are not really good at it. But main camera night mode, I would say both are at a nice tie. That's how I want to put it. So now let's talk about video, where the iPhone just it takes a win by a huge margin because firstly, the video quality is not as good as the iPhone. It's very distinctly visible, and although stabilization because of the gimbal camera might at times give you like one or two less jerks when you're walking, but basically overall I have to say that the iPhone's video quality is better. It's expected. Another problem is that with the ultra-wide camera and the zoom camera, mainly the 5 times zoom, the X50 Pro cannot do 4K, so that is a huge drawback in my opinion, and it doesn't look nice. The iPhone, however, 4K on all cameras, so once again, easy win. So yes, videos is a massive win for the iPhone, and it's expected. I mean, this is not as powerful a device, nor does it have the most high quality sensors. It does have insanely good versatility, but the X50 Pro doesn't have the best sensors, especially in the ultra-wide camera. So now about performance. The iPhone takes a win. I mean, what would you expect? It's a mid-range Android device. It's good, it's alright, it'll serve your purposes, but if you want to play crazy games or, use heavier applications like, I don't know, video editing on your phone, I don't know who does that, but if you're into that kind of stuff, then the iPhone is better. It's got the most powerful chipset in a smartphone to date, and I think that's going to remain like that for a while. But anyways, battery life, I wouldn't say it's an easy win for the iPhone, but I have seen at times that the iPhone's efficiency tends to be a little bit better than the X50 Pro, because I'm getting like 6 hours and a little bit more. Like it's not 6.5 hours, but 6 hours and 10 minutes of screen on time, or 6 hours and 15 minutes. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about for the X50 Pro. The iPhone, however, almost every single time I'm getting over 6 hours to 6.5 hours, because it's got an insanely efficient chipset, there's a software optimization, and then of course there's a 60Hz display, which is not pretty to look at or scroll especially, but it does help a lot with battery. So yeah, overall I have to say that battery life is a tiny win for the iPhone. You won't find a crazy difference between the two, but if you are really looking for the battery champ between the X50 Pro and iPhone 12, it is the iPhone. So overall though, man, it's a close comparison, let's face it, because although the iPhone is better in video, and then it's better in content consumption, and then it is better in performance by a long margin, and also a little bit in battery, the X50 Pro strikes back hard with the price tag, because let's face it, for a mid-range device you expect mid-range specs. What you do not expect are the tremendously good display. I know other phones have good displays, but this display is fantastic looking. And other than the HDR part, everything else about the display is great. The design, again, fantastic. It is, in my opinion, better than the iPhone, because there's a matte finish which holds a lot of fingerprints, but then the overall design is a lot more comfortable. So yes, I think that the design is better. Thirdly, the cameras, with the photography being almost as good, if not at times better than the latest iPhone. Wow, that's crazy good. I mean, congratulations to Vivo's team to make such a fantastic device with such a fantastic software to support it, because in photography, it's easy to overdo software processing, and that's where the balance was struck perfectly to couple the good hardware overall. It's not the best hardware, it is good, but software and hardware altogether, they work so well and seamlessly that they can compete with the iPhone, the latest one. That is a huge achievement, as I said before, and I do think that Vivo did a tremendous job in terms of photography. Video, they didn't really have much to do because, first and foremost, the hardware isn't the best in the world. Secondly, it doesn't really have the huge power that the flagships have, and especially that the iPhone has. So basically, with the lower price tag coming in at around $600 to $650 at the moment versus $800, and do keep in mind that in India, the iPhone 12 costs around like $1,100. That is the case for some reason, but anyhow, if you want to spend $1,100 for an iPhone 12, don't. Obviously, that would be my advice to everyone in India. Don't spend so much money on the iPhone because it's overpriced by a huge margin. The iPhone 12 is worth $800. It's not worth $1,100. So yeah, including the price tags of both of these, and also considering the insane price hike that the iPhones have in India for some odd reason, I have to say, I like the X50 Pro more when it comes to deciding on which one you should go for and whether or not you should save up on your money. I do think the X50 Pro will serve you better. Of course, if you want the iPhone and you want iOS, the iPhone is the way to go, and I do think that the iPhone 12 is the best among the 12 series. So with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, do hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will be seeing you guys later. Cheers.